I'll try terribly hard not to bore you to tears with probably one of the most dour sounding topics of inequality. You're all here because you give a damn. As I'm preaching to the converted in one way. I want to pick up on some of the things that were said this morning. We heard a lot about working people, rightly so. And we've heard a lot about the cuts and how it affects working people. But the cuts don't only make effect to services, they affect something else. They affect very, very insidiously a rise in prejudice and discrimination. And if people don't believe that, ask anybody who's disabled whether they've been assaulted, offended, yelled at, shoved, etc. in the last 4 years. The polls that have been taken have been showing that disability hate crime has risen from a lowly 12% 5 years ago to a whopping great 73% last year. The government say it's nothing to do with them. Well, I have to say, I think it's down to the press and the media and their perpetual rhetoric of scrounging, skiving, lazy, idle. We hear people apparently throwing them in. They can go to work according to the DEAEP. They've got Parkinson's. They've got cancer. There have been people dying while they're waiting for their benefits because they've been found fit for work. That's life for disabled people today. It's not only disabled people that are affected by inequality. I'm not going to pretend it is. But I can't stand here as a white woman and talk about how it affects race other than on a very much theoretical level, and I don't want to do that. I want to talk about how disability, how inequality affects all of us every day. It isn't about making things for those at the bottom to be better. Inequality is about about levelling the playing field, about addressing issues for all of us, for everybody. When we have cuts to health, when we have cuts to the NHS, it disproportionately affects those of us that are vulnerable. It disproportionately affects those of us that are disabled, that are elderly. But it also affects everybody else. It's exactly the same with any of the cuts. We are disproportionately affected. But equally, so are the millionaires, believe it or not. Because we do have millionaires that turn out to be disabled. Now, they may have it better than me. I'm not saying Stephen Hawkins doesn't have a better life than I do. But he still puts up with being told that he's useless, despite his brilliance. He's still told he can't do things, despite his money. It can happen to anybody at any time. It's the one discriminatory factor that changes like that. It can change, in my case, in 5 seconds with a car waving at somebody on the other side of the road and forgetting to look at the fact that I'm parked right in front of them. It can happen to anybody like that. Every one of you in this room could become disabled within seconds. I won't wish it on any of you, but it happens. It's real. It's as real as any of the other disabling factors. We hear about the welfare reform and how it's affected the benefits. It's not only affected us in terms of we get less money now. Everybody's got less money. Everybody's suffering because of energy rises, because of prices being hiked up by the supermarkets. But we are affected because we're actually told we're not allowed those benefits anymore because they've changed the goalposts. When we had disability living allowance, 82% of people got awards. Now they've changed that to a preposterously named personal independence payment. So if you look at your get PIP, well, it is PIP, it's Apple PIP. We're getting a smaller amount of money. We've got the same issues, but we get less for it. It's also harder to get. So the fact that Leicester City Council, in its wisdom, has decreed that those of us with disability living allowance, despite the fact it is one of the few benefits that is not to be taken into account for any calculations for anything else, they've decided we can pay the bedroom tax, and we can pay for the hiking council tax, and we can pay for the proportion that we now have to pay towards our housing benefit. Those changes cost me personally £40 a week. That's what Peter Soulsby has taken from me by saying, yes, we'll use DNA as income. Yes, we'll use it as part of our spending cuts. Don't know how any of you, even those of you that are in good paying jobs, could afford to lose £40 a week. If you can, please tell me how, because we've not worked it out yet, those of us that try and find ways. There's another thing in this city that amazed me when I was looking at statistics. I looked at the new consultation for the new 6-year coming up plan that Sir Soulsby's put out for you. He says you can consult online with him. He's given you 6 boxes to say what you want. We've offered you the chance to come and tell our councillors what you want them to say in the budget. You've got your opportunity in the workshop to lay that out in each of the areas you've selected. But Soulsby's put everything. Maybe this is why he saved his 43.5 million that Barbara spoke about earlier. Maybe that's why he's put it into the reserves. Both councillors mentioned it's in the future. Because he must have that crystal ball that I broke years ago, the one that told me that I was going to go out that Sunday morning and get the back broke in a car. He must have that crystal ball because he says what he's investing in is high skill, high rated, high paid jobs. Brilliant. But this is Leicester. In Leicester we have 41.5% of our adults, which is approximately half the population, given that half are young people, with less than level 1 qualifications. Now, the last time I looked at high-paying, high-flying jobs, particularly in IT and these great industries, can you get that with a less than level 1 qualification? Don't think so. You need degrees and post-degrees. How are our adults going to be able to access these jobs that Soulsby's put in all his reserves in the bank for? I don't know. Maybe somebody can say, somebody can tell me. Because if they can't, maybe that's something you'd like to ask Wayne and Barbara to ask at the next council. To ask to Soulsby, how are those adults going to access these jobs with their less than level 1 NVQ qualifications? We're not only being cut, we're not only having austerity. Dave mentioned one thing at his closing speech. He mentioned the one thing that matters perhaps most of all, perhaps more than the disproportionate levels of deprivation that some of us face. And that is, we're losing our rights to freedom. The freedoms that my grandparents certainly fought in the World War IV. My granddad ran away at 15 during World War I. If he was alive today, he'd be standing here and calling you words that I wouldn't dare say on a public platform. But I'm quite happy to tell you in the corridor if you want to hear them. Because he could cuss with like a navvy. We're losing freedom. We've got young people being put in colleges for 2 years, locked away won't go into their training or education. So if you want to be a NEET, we'll lock you up. That's scary, considering what's happened in young people's prisons. But I don't suppose that matters, because they'll have come from the 40% of deprived people in Leicester. 40% of people living in Leicester are at risk of deprivation. And the shocking figure is another 50% are at a moderate risk, according to Experian, when they do their overall credit checks. So living in Leicester leaves you with a 90% chance of becoming moderately, high-levelly deprived. So that's not enough to convince you that we've got to change, we've got to get away from the current system, and the only way to do it is to get off our backsides and join with these people, join with LICAC, join with TUS, and let's move together for the sake of all of us, please. Thank you.